So, hey everyone, thanks for joining us today in this. This is my first virtual event, so let's see how things are going to go. So I'm here today to talk about something which is happening for the Yocto project, which is a very important event for the project, which is about the announcement we've made recently about the long-term support. So I'm working for Linaro, and I'm also the community manager for the Yocto project. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this talk today. So what we are going to discuss, so it's a fairly short amount of time. So I mean, we had to reduce and just go straight to the point. This is what we are going to discuss today. So I want to give a very quick explanation about how the Yocto project is organized and the membership. We won't go into any technical details or into too many details about the Yocto project itself, but it's just like a quick introduction and quick overview. Then we'll talk about the current release process that we've been following for, I mean, many years now, which pretty much hasn't changed since the beginning. We talked about some recent improvement that the project has done in terms of automated testing, which is actually one of the reasons why we could discuss about LTS. And then finally, we'll talk about the LTS, how it happened. We'll share some details about that, what it's going to be, and what's going to happen in the next, I mean, very shortly. And finally, I mean, I'm sure you want to help, so how he will be able to help us with this very important change for the project. So let's start. Every Yocto presentation starts with this slide, I think. So basically, what is the Yocto project? So it's not. We have a lot of issues with the terminology. Most people are very confused by, I mean, what the Yocto project is about. So we try to explain that as much as we can. The Yocto project, it's not a Linux distribution. It's not. It's basically a set of templates, all the tools and all the methods that you need so that you can actually build your own Linux system. So it came from the embedded space, and nowadays we see it's used more and more elsewhere as well. But basically, if you have to remember something, it's basically everything, all the tools you need, all the scripts that you need to make your own Linux system. So it's not one specific distro. It can make as many distros as you want or as many Linux systems as you want. The organization itself, so there is a whole organization behind the Yocto project. So it's a project which is hosted by the Linux Foundation, which started in 2010. It was the first collaborative project started by the Linux Foundation back then. The project architect was and still is today Richard Purdy, who most people involved with the project should know by now. The project uses OpenEmbedded, which is another open source project that was specialized in building a Linux distribution, which started way before that. But there is definitely a very close relationship between the OpenEmbedded project and the Yocto project. The governing board, so basically the organization is made of members. The members are companies. They are typically Linux Foundation corporate members, and we have different levels of membership based on, I mean, how much the company wants to be involved with the project and how much they can. But basically, we have silver, gold, and platinum level of membership. And yeah, the company that joined the project are the company that want to influence the project direction. Every major decision in the project or change that we make to the project organization or is actually voted by the governing members. But this company also contribute, I mean, financially. I mean, there is a certain amount of money that we need to actually run the project. I mean, everybody must know by now, but we run many services, build servers, and we also have some websites, and we have many. I mean, some costs associated with running the project. So that's basically all the member organization that actually, thanks to this company, that we can do that today. The governing board also is nominating and voting for the Yocto Project Technical Steering Committee, which is something fairly new in the life of the project, started last year, but that's been established last year, but that's also a big, an important step for the governing member. You have a couple of links here that if you are interested in learning more about the membership structure and how to join the project. And of course, we can always come back to me later if you have any specific questions. The way the day-to-day project is organized is around the governing board, also called the advisory board. And we have different teams, and they are like individuals running. Each of these teams, we have on one side the technical side, the TSC, which is in charge of all the technical decisions for the project. The governing board is in charge of basically all the business decisions, the budgets, and the general administration for the project. So we meet as much as needed from time to time. And that's how the project evolves and is making decisions. And then on top of that, we have the advocacy team and the community team, where we actually look at things like marketing or organizing events. If you know about the project, you probably have heard or have even attended one of the Dev Day, for example, or the Yocto Project Summit. So that's the kind of things that we organize. So it's people that are involved and closely involved with the project, and discussing these things and making decisions in that regards. So again, that was a very quick intro. I didn't want to have this talk without giving some background about how the project is organized, because that also explains how we ended up with making the decision about the LTS, for example. The current release process. So it's a non-fact, but we basically have been doing two releases a year since the very first 1.0 release. It has never failed. We have sometimes slightly postponed by a month the release, but that's as much as we've done. There is a release in spring, in April, and in October, the fall release. And it's been like that since the beginning. So all the project has a very predictable release cadence. We have this 6-month cadence where we do a bunch of the changes and most of the drastic changes as early as possible in the release cycle. And then we tend to have milestones where we actually have feature complete, and then we start heavy testing of the project. So that's what we are doing. Also, just to avoid some misunderstanding, so what we call a release of the Yocto project is basically what some people would call the pocket tree. That's basically the aggregation of OE core, OpenEmbedded core, BitBake, Meta Yocto, and the whole set of documentation as well. So that's basically what we end up releasing every 6 months. What our release usually include, and again, that's usually, it can change, but in the major release, so every 6 months, we can make any change. We can include API changes in all the components. So the project is about the maintenance of all the metadata for the open source project. So we include all the latest version of every project that we support and maintain. We include new features, so we can even break things like in BitBake. We can actually make drastic changes everywhere. We tend to use the LTS kernel version as much as we can, because that's something which is much easier to support for us. We of course fix issues that are reported to the project. There are various ways people tend to report issues to the project, but we try to fix them when we are aware of them. And then, we can make any change around the project. Whether it's infrastructure testing, infrastructure changes, script changes, anything. So basically, every 6 months there are a bunch of changes that we make, and that can one of the consequences of that is that it might be sometimes it might actually be difficult for people to keep up with the amount of changes, and upgrading every 6 months might actually be slightly more difficult than people had wished. So we can add new architecture when that comes, and yeah, any kind of change. One thing which this is actually quite good with this 6-month release cycle is that we have a very tight integration with upstreams. Which means that if you use the latest Yocto release, you will be running very likely the most recent software for everything. All the core components of the Linux OS. We also do stable release. So after we make the fall and April release, we make the dot release, so .1, .2, etc. We have some very strict rules about what we do and how we manage these branches. The first one is it's a very strict backport policy. So you your change must be in master first, and then it will be backported. What we accept in the stable branch release is only like bug fixes or security fixes. We don't make changes, upgrade of component. We don't break API. We don't add new features. It's really about stability and fixes. So that's the process we are following with stable release. The testing is very much the same as what we usually do with the regular release. So it all looks good, but there are some challenges along the what we usually do in terms of the maintenance we do for the release is we try to maintain the last two previously released and while we work on the next release. So basically that gives like a maintenance window up to 1 year, which is not enough again sometimes for some specific use cases to deal with support. The work is done thanks firstly for people that volunteer their work. It's mostly community time, and it's not something that is funded or financed by the project. It's basically thanks to the community that we're able to do this thing. The testing, which is basically the same, has been the same so far as what the project is doing, is relying on some manual testing, which is done by some of our members. So basically we are doing some overhead on some of the member resources for the manual testing. So that's seen as a challenge, and it's been an issue at times. So we've talked about the project, we've talked about the release, the current release, the stable release process. Over the last 2 years, there's been drastic changes in how we do CI and test automation for the project. We've revisited completely the way we do the CI infrastructure and the CI loop with a new version of the auto builder, and we also bought new hardware to actually run our infrastructure. So we have today, something like 25 recent servers to builders, and we validate more than 12 host distribution. So that's that refresh of the infrastructure was a fairly large expense for the project last year. That was very much needed to actually modernize the builder and actually spend less time waiting for the builds to complete. So that was one part of the change. The other part has been also discussed quite a bit last year in various places and articles, but there has been a lot of work to actually reduce the need for manual testing. So we used to have a huge amount of manual testing everywhere in the system, even in every piece of the system. And a lot of work has been put together, led by Richard and the rest of the community to actually try to do more and more test automation. Whether it's running more p-tests and adding support for more p-tests. P-test is the test automation we use for packages in OpenEmbedded. We've been extending and running LTP, and we've also done a lot of test automation in terms of test reproducibility. What we end up with basically is when we do like a full automated test for a build, we almost run 2 million tests in 8 hours across all architecture that we are interested. So it's and if you had seen what we were doing in the past, this is like a stunning number that we can do today. So all in all, the limitation and the issues and that we have seen with the stable release and the improvement that we have seen in terms of automated testing have led and opened up the discussion for LTS. So how it happened and why it happened. As we said, the 6-month release cadence, it aligns very well with the pace of open source. Open source does, release as often as possible, and that's actually really good. However, when we have some people using the Yocto project and trying to make some product on their own use case and on some specific markets, making a product takes more than 6 months. So basically, by the time you are ready to make your product, ship your product, you are already using release, which is not the latest one. So what we see is that many companies out there that are using the Yocto project release, they just end up doing their own LTS on their own. So basically what they do is they start their own, they pick a release, and obviously, every company is going to pick a different release. And everybody is going to try to do, LTS on their own, trying to backport security fixes, backport bug fixes, and so on. And most of the time, what we see is they do that behind their closed doors. So, we don't even know about what's happening. So over the years, it has become like one of the big main complaint that we hear when we meet, developers at the events that we organize, the BOF that we do at, the LF events. That's what we hear. People would like the project to make a decision and do something about LTS. So what happened is that at the last ELCE, it was in October 2019, the TSC has come up with a proposal to the governing board on how and what we should be doing for LTS. There has been obviously a bunch of discussions within the governing board about, whether that, why and the value of doing that, and the pros and cons, etc. And we've been very happy that we were able to announce back in March, earlier in March, that we would be doing LTS moving forward. So you have the link to the announcement here. So again, what is important here is the process and how things happen. So that's all the changes that have happened. So we were in a position for the TSC to make the proposal. So what the LTS proposal is, at least from the high level perspective. So we want to have an LTS every 2 years. So we want to have something which is predictable. People know when the next LTS is, and people can rely. So the idea is that we want to, all the companies that use the Yocto project and that need LTS, instead of picking their own version, they will start aligning on one single version. So at least we align all the companies out there on a single version. The project will maintain that LTS for 2 years. It won't be like for 1 year as we do today. It will be maintained for 2 years. The maintenance of that branch will actually be funded by the Yocto project membership. It won't be community time. So we have evaluated that, or we have basically approved a budget for someone to work half time basically as maintainer, official maintainers for that branch, and we expect that it will actually be very helpful for the project. We are currently, in process of hiring and trying to finalize and find someone, and we will be announcing that later in April. The next release in April, or actually very soon now, the 3.1 release will be the first LTS. So everybody is aware that this is going to be the first LTS. And hopefully what we will see is that people will start aligning their use of the release toward this release. One consequence of that, because we have this LTS every 2 years that will be maintained for 2 years, that the intermediate stable release, so the one that will not be LTS, we will reduce their maintenance to 7 months. 7 months, so that it actually is helpful for companies that want to switch from release to release. They have like a window where they are still maintained for the current release until the next release is ready, and so on. So so basically what we think is with this setup, we are going to address the need of people who want to use switch from release to release without to worry about the LTS. We also want to address the need for companies that are very interested into the LTS. And finally, of course, we don't want to discourage anyone to leave on master and just keep using master or keep developing against master branch. Of course, everything remains under the responsibility of the TSC. The LTS release process as the regular process, and the maintainer. So the maintainer will basically report his time and report his work to the Yocto Project TSC. A bit more details about what we want to do. The components that we will be covering, the components are included into the Yocto project release today. So same as in the very first slide, BitBay, Core, Meta Yocto, the Yocto documentations. Of course, we are not going to cover all the layers that exist, especially, Meta OE is not included. Every vendors and different layers are not included. We will probably encourage every owners of these layers and maintainers of these layers to align with our, the Yocto Project LTS process and release as well. And we think it will happen over time. What we will do is we will only support a subset of the native build platform. I'm talking about the host distro, like basically what you use on your host. As you know, the Yocto project supports a wide variety of host distro. Over time, it's very complex to actually run like an old version of Yocto on like a very recent version of like a one of the Linux distros. So we'll see and we'll announce when we start the LTS for every release which exact distro we support, but you might expect to have like things like Ubuntu, for example, LTS will be supported. So that will be announced when we actually make the release. We have some tools and mechanisms, it's called build tools, where we actually generate some binaries that are useful to run, to build an old version of Yocto with a newer distro, which we hope will be also useful for people. And we'll see, and we'll see, I mean, as time goes. In terms of the testing, we'll also make some change. We will rely on the project auto builders, of course, and we will only run automated testing. So the improvement that I've been mentioning before, and we will only run on virtualized platforms. We will not be running on any actual hardware. So what the project is doing is we will maintain LTS for the project as a whole, but we will not be testing on actual hardware. There are tools like CV checks or CV tools that we will look at using and deploying as well to make sure that we understand what we are doing in terms of the security fixes. So what it is, what is not, we've had some interesting discussions on the mailing list since we've made the announcement. Just to clarify, so what this is a major change for the project. It's a significant expense for the membership. And that's our response to something that we've heard over the many years about something that was needed for the project. It's an initiative where we want to create a place for everybody to collaborate, again, by making sure that every 2 years there is one main release, which will become LTS. We expect that people will start all working against the same branch, at least the companies that are willing to help and willing to use the LTS. And we want to make sure that people will start more collaboration. So we will provide a full-time a maintainer for the branch founded by the project. That engineer won't be enough to actually fix all the bugs and all the security fix, but what we hope is that we will create the opportunity for everybody to collaborate and work with this maintainer and the rest of the community to make sure that our LTS gets better and better. It's something we have a guarantee that we will have all the resources available to do the integration of all the patches that we see that are addressed against the LTS, and we have testing resources as well, so that we can actually make the release and fast release as much as needed. One issue that I've not said, we didn't have a mechanism to do fast release before, like the stable release. So to date, require like the full testing cycle, including manual testing and so on. So that was never really like a fast release. So as important as it's also very important to say what it is not, it's definitely not a replacement for anybody out there that actually offers commercial support. There are many companies that are in the Yocto project ecosystem, OSVs, that actually offer like very long-term support. We are talking 5 years, 10 years, and probably even more, I'm sure. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to enable, the community to work together, at least to enable one main LTS every 2 years. We won't be able to guarantee that every single CV fixes will be there and will be integrated. We guarantee that we have somebody that will be there to work with the rest of the community and the rest of the companies, but there is no guarantee that all CV will be fixed. And of course, we won't be checking, like custom, every product is going to be using many different layers. So what we will be doing is LTS for the core components, as I mentioned earlier. So with that said, how you can help, or how can you help us? There are definitely many different ways. The first one is what we really hope is that everybody will start contributing and share bug fixes, CV and security patches. That's the most important thing. If we all work together, that will actually make the project a whole lot better for everybody else. So that's what we all want in the end. So we want everybody to share a little bit of the pain of the maintenance and the bug fixes, and then we enable that and make release for everybody else. You can test the LTS. Nobody makes a product with just a Yocto release. Everybody adds their own distro, their own base port, and so on. So test LTS, test with your distro, test with your base port, and report the bugs. And of course, for us, I mean, we started the LTS, but we don't want to stop, I mean, the development of the project. I mean, master branch remains our main development branch. So if you use master branch and you develop against master, continue to do so. We definitely don't want, I mean, only the LTS to be there. We definitely want to see more and more contribution on the master branch as well. And one thing you can do as well, if you can as well, is join the Yocto project and support the Yocto project and become a member. The hope is that this LTS thing will give us more membership eventually, and we can probably extend, I mean, maybe the duration or what we do for the LTS and so on and so on. So I think it's 25 minutes. And on the last slides, I mean, you have various ways you can find us and reach out to us. I think that's the end. So thanks for listening. If you have any specific questions, I mean, you can join one of the mailing lists. I mean, reach out to the mailing list or find us on, I mean, IRC anywhere. You can talk to me directly as well, and I'm sure I can. If I don't have the answer, I can find the answer for you. So thanks for listening today, and hopefully you will all start testing and using the LTS soon.